Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm going to talk about what it means to have your Mars square to someone's ascendant in Synastry or vice versa. Now, this aspect, I don't feel squares to the ascendant are particularly as difficult as potentially other squares. I might have an unpopular opinion on that, but the reason for that is it's common if a planet is square to the ascendant, which it'll also be square to the descendant, the first and seventh house cusps. If it's square to those, it commonly could be actually conjunct to the IC, the fourth house cusp, or the midheaven, the 10th house cusp. Because sometimes, depending on which house system you're using, especially if you're using, equal house, then you're going to have Mars would be either conjunct the IC, the fourth house cusp, or the 10th house cusp. So even though there's a square to the first and seventh, there's actually a conjunction to either one of those house cusps, which brings a lot more in common than if this were just a square to another planet that did not also have a conjunction attached to another planet or point. So even with that being said, though, difficulties can arise with this square. And those will usually be the Mars person feeling a bit of frustration with the ascendant person. Sometimes the way that the ascendant person acts pisses off the Mars person, or just really activates them. Now, it kind of depends on the Mars person's Mars too, what's happening with the energy. So you want to look at the sign that this square is taking place in. But yeah, sometimes the ascendant person can just, by their mode of natural action and expression, just really irk the Mars person, or just mildly frustrate them, or depending on, the nature of their Mars, seriously anger them. So aside from that going on, there is a ton of attraction with this placement. So it's similar to, the Mars ascendant conjunction is probably one of the hottest synastry aspects as far as being physically attracted to someone. With the Mars square ascendant, there's still a ton of attraction. So the square is a lot more powerful of an aspect than the sextile or trine, but less powerful than the conjunction. More headbutting, right? But there's still a high level of attraction, and the attraction is predominantly physical. So that's, a big theme of this. Now, if Mars is conjunct the IC, or in the fourth house squaring the ascendant, then the Mars person is actually going to really do a lot for the house person as far as home and family. Even though Mars is squaring the ascendant person's ascendant, they're activating some very deep-rooted familial energies if Mars is in the fourth house. So this can be, a husband or a wife that really does a lot for the ascendant person around the home. And the square can actually show up as an increase in activity, okay, as far as the fourth house goes, if Mars is in the person's fourth house. Now, if Mars is conjunct to the person's midheaven or in the 10th house, the activity is going to be in the more public eye, or more like in a career sense. So if you're having someone's Mars square your ascendant and their Mars is conjunct your midheaven or in your 10th house, then yeah, this buzz of activity, because the square does kind of create a buzz of activity, is going to be directly related to your career or highest calling. And you actually could find that this square is super helpful and super energizing in those 10th house matters. So while at the same time, you do sometimes butt heads, specifically the Mars person, just because it's Mars is the planet that shows our anger as well. It's usually going to be the Mars person more irritated with the Ascendant person at times, but at the same time, they still feel a ton of attraction and motivated to help them direct their life in some way. So see, if it's coming from the 4th, they're directing their home life, their family life, stuff around the house. If it's coming from the 10th, they're positively or negatively directing their career or something to do with their higher calling and their public image. So those are just two little side notes there. So this square does tend to bring a lot of activity. So it's also square to the descendant, the 7th house cusp, right? So having this square for the Ascendant person, I've talked a lot about the Mars person, the Ascendant person really can feel like the Mars person, they're attracted to them, but at the same time, there is something about the way that the Mars person acts that, you know, maybe they're not sure if this is the right person to partner with, or, you know, they see the Mars person's irritation at them sometime, and like, it's definitely a feisty relationship, right? It's not a calm and peaceful relationship. It's an action-oriented relationship. It's a powerfully attractive, fiery relationship. And the Ascendant person can be kind of like motivated by the Mars person, but at the same time, they sense that, you know, there is conflict. This is an aspect of attraction through conflict, right? Now, the Ascendant person can also find the Mars person to be very physically attractive, very like heroic in a sense, or even like something about the physical body is very attractive, but at the same time, you know, they could feel like the Mars person is too aggressive or too bossy or, you know, not peaceful enough. When someone's planets are in our 7th house or trine to the 7th house or sextile to the 7th house cusp, the descendant, and sextile to the Ascendant, we feel like we can blend with them and it's easy to get along. When someone's planet is square to that axis, it just requires a little bit of effort. It's like having a second take at someone. Like, your first reaction is like, oh, you know, maybe there's a jarring effect, or we're just kind of butting heads. But then you think about it a bit and you're thinking, well, you know, maybe I could actually use some of that energy in my life. So if you think about it, just like naturally the Ascendant would be ruled by Aries, right? The first house naturally rules Aries. So this is kind of like a cardinal square. No matter what sign your Ascendant is in, just naturally, like, squares to the Ascendant work out as more of like a cardinal square. And meaning like cardinal signs, right? Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So cardinal squares are more about action and energy and getting shit done. And that's why I emphasize the activity of this square so much. So as long as you guys have like proper outlets for this high amount of energy and just have tolerance for each other and recognize there are going to be a little bit of, or there is going to be a little bit of headbutting and maybe some frustration, irritation at times, and like a little bit of maybe arguing to clear the air. This is actually a very active combination, and there can be a ton of physical attraction, and it's, in my opinion, yeah, squares to the Ascendant are not too difficult, maybe an unpopular opinion, but yeah, this one can definitely be significant. So aspects to the angles in general do tend to be significant for our personality and for our life's journey, and it does tend to show up in marriage type relationships as well. So yeah, with this square, it can manifest in some of those ways, or maybe different ways. I'd love to know your experience of this one. Let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching, you guys. Thanks for requesting this one. Let me know your requests in the comments, and I will add them to my list.